So welcome back to the Daily Grind podcast. Today we are joined with Alex Demirel. Alex, thank you for coming on today.
Cheers, fellas. Pleasure.
Mate.
Brilliant. So I think the best place to go to begin with would be to sort of take us back to where it sort of all began for you in terms of business specifically, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Give us a sort of a brief rundown of what you do and sort of where you've come from, really.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have seen my YouTube story, right? So
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of that's the story, right, in and of itself. Always been into fitness. Started out in fitness. 15, 16, started out insecure. Do you ever guys watch that film, Never Back Down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favourites of all time.
That's
What
what
a
got
film.
me into it, right?
Yeah.
And I remember I had the soundtrack on, and back then there's no wireless headphones, right? So I had the little shitty wired headphones
Yeah.
in my phone, in my Sony Walkman or whatever it was
Yeah.
back then.
Nice.
And I would run to the gym with the soundtrack on
Yeah.
and train. And not knowing how to train, I had no clue, but I had heart, right?
Yeah.
And got a little bit of results, and then kids started noticing in school, and then I was just kind of hooked from there because I had that kind of it was like a special thing to me to be noticed, like, oh, I'm Big Al now. So I kind of went full autistic mode with it and just funneled in, like scouring the web and like looking at the time it was like Matt Ogus, who was big on YouTube, because there wasn't much information out there. There was a lot of bro science, so I just got obsessed with that, and I was like I was so obsessed, man. Like I'd finish school and then we'd do like football practice, and then I'd be absolutely knackered. I'd be on like called the warrior diet because I had no clue, which is like just basically one meal a day, starving myself, walk like 5-6 miles to the gym, do my squats and all that stuff, like 2-hour workout, walk back, and then like have a shake with like raw eggs.
Yeah.
Because I thought that's how it has to be, like Rocky style.
Proper bro.
Yeah, and then like spike my insulin, knock myself out, have a power nap, and I just did that for like a good year, and it worked obviously because of noob gains. Anyway, that sparked like my interest with it, because with fitness, it taught me actually a lot about business.
Okay.
It's quite a cliche, but it really did. It was like, if you put in the work consistently and don't make excuses, you eventually will get the output. Like you will get the fruits of your labor. And it was almost like, it was quite fair in the sense that you'll get out what you put in. Like a deadlift bar, like, it never lies. Like 200 pounds is always 200 pounds. It's never going to lie to you. It's like, so if you've lost strength, it's like, well, look, you've been slacking whether you want to admit it or not. And I carried that over to like, if you just grit your teeth and get the shit done that you don't want to do, you will eventually get the results that you want.
Yeah.
And that really helped like curate my kind of drive that I have now. And not that I'm completely against, to be honest, the hustle culture, but in terms of like having that grit to do things, like to push yourself, like you've got to curate that, I think. Doing that at a young age really helped. So yeah, after like 5 years of training, built a pretty sick physique, to be honest. And then I got scouted for modeling, and then I'll try and keep this short. Scouted for modeling, they persuaded me to like lose the weight because like, you'll do really well, blah blah blah. So I fucking starved myself, like 3-day fast and all that stuff. Like, oh man, like really bad eating disorder, like fucked my life up for like 2-3 years. Like wouldn't go to social events, wouldn't really go on dates and stuff. Like just low libido, low energy, doing 12-hour shifts in Selfridges in London here. And then I was like, I can't keep doing this, man. So moved back home, quit this job that I didn't like, the very corporate job. I tried a few jobs at this time. I was an apprentice, and it was starting to dawn on me at like 22, 23. I was like, I don't like having a 9 to 5. I don't like having a boss. I don't know if that's like my naive ego, like just not wanting someone above me, the hierarchy, but I just didn't like being told what to do. And I also felt that if I worked really hard, I was invisible. If I did one thing bad, they'd chastise me for it. And I didn't like that aspect, and that's just how it is. So I was like, right, I want to start working for myself. Fitness had always been there.
Yeah.
This was back in 2012, and Instagram just started really, and I was growing quite easy because back then it was so easy to grow.
Yeah. Not what it is now.
No, like Instagram right now is a mess, man. I'd personally go to YouTube or other platforms. Like, I really don't like Instagram anymore. So yeah, I started focusing on that, and people were asking me like, oh, do you do coaching? And I was like, well, no. Didn't know it was a thing. So I brought out like a few shitty training plans and all that stuff, diet plans, and then it was getting a bit of attention. But then I basically, when I moved back though, I couldn't continue that role because I got depressed through my own fault of having an eating disorder. So I started binging, and I fucked up like an opportunity of some agency was going to introduce me to ASOS, but I messed it up because I binged like a few days before, so I really beat myself up, and that just spiraled into a negative pit.
When you say you messed up, was it you messed up because of the binge, as in the confidence was then gone, or because of the physique?
Yeah, but to be honest, man, like I probably would have been fine, but mentally in my head, like when you're getting into modeling, it's like you are never good enough. Like with the gym, the day you started lifting is the day forever small.
Yeah.
And with modeling, it's like you never feel like there's someone taller than me, there's someone leaner, there's like someone better looking. So I was always like, oh, I'm not ready to go unless I feel like I'm in peak condition, which that never really happens, man. You never feel ready, right? But just because I binged a few days before, the water retention was like, I just sabotaged myself. But then obviously I beat myself up. So I got basically fat and depressed for the next 6 months because I just couldn't get out of that cycle. I was living back home with the parents, and it was just the worst thing for me at that age. Like, if there's one thing I tell myself then, is like, just get out of the house, man.
Yeah.
Like, just do whatever you can just to get out of the house. Doesn't matter if it's a shit job at Tesco's, whatever, just get out. But yeah, I got fat and depressed, and then I was at a crossroad, and Mo at the time was like, we're looking at starting this business idea of like 3 lads starting a website, subscription based, like what we would have wanted when we were younger in terms of like self-development, because it's very, very like popular right now. Self-development, isn't it? And peak performance. So we thought that'd be a great platform, like for a lot of lads to have that voice or that kind of community feel of like, you're not alone in the sense that you can be quite lonely. Self-development in the sense that not a lot of people kind of get it. Like, why are you reading books on this or that? Like, why aren't you out with the lads, like partying and drinking? It's like, and that's all well and good. Like, we would go out and have a party and we go to music festivals, but we also wanted the better life. We also found purpose in developing yourself as a man. It was really fulfilling. Even little things like, I don't know, back then it was like how to talk to girls or like, you know, body language,
to them all.
right?
Yeah.
So you always find a means to an end in that. Anyway, long story short with that was actually going really well. So then I got a little bit of experience with, I never really saw it as a business at the time. It wasn't really like properly ran, but it gave us some experience in terms of marketing. And I quickly learned that to start my own business, I had to be like an octopus. I had to have several limbs. Like, one was a marketer, one was a copywriter, one was a content creator, one was videography, one was editing. Like, in the beginning, I find that you have to be good at a lot of things.
Wear all the hats.
Yeah,
Say,
exactly. Yeah, and like, you can outsource this stuff, and that's okay, outsource it, delegate, that makes sense. But in the beginning, you don't have money to outsource it, right? And you also don't know what to look for when you're outsourcing it. You don't know what your edit is. You don't know what your look is, right? So in the beginning, you do just have to kind of fumble around in the dirt and just try shit and throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. So through that, I learned a lot, and I learned that about, you know, the power of social media and like online is the way forward. So then I got my PT qualification because I wanted to do a part-time job. But then COVID hit, so I couldn't do that. So then I was like, right, I have to do the coaching online. I've been training for like 10 years at this time. So, and I coached a few people, like not properly, but I knew my way around it. I did my research and stuff and took some little courses and asked for opinions and stuff. And other coaches who were doing the same, like Tom was a coach at the time, like kind of like looked at his stuff and he helped me. And then just full transparency with the first few clients that I got, like, you know, this is a new program and stuff, and like just disclaimer, and always was very, very, very safe, like never starving them, always just like very cookie cutter kind of like eat more vegetables, like nothing dangerous, right? Just under the accountability of me, and got some good results. And just having that marketing of RET, of that platform, was really good for an influx of clients. And I found that clients want to work with me more for mindset as well, the younger lads, not just how to look good, you know, have a good physique. It was more the mindset. So I started going deeper into that, and I learned about stoicism, naturally gravitating towards that. That was really helpful or pivotal for me with business as well, being what's the word, the dichotomy of control. So you focus on what you can control, not what you can't control. And so many people are the victim, and they worry about these things that they have no control over, and they repeat it on their mind. It's like, mate, just forget about that and focus what you can control. So for me in business, it was like, okay, there's a pandemic, I can't do anything about it. I'm not going to wallow in self-pity and be like, oh, like, it's not my fault, look, I can't launch my business because it's a pandemic. I was like, right, what can we do? We can post on social media, we can give really good value, we can just be having genuine conversations with people. And then 6 months to a year later, those people were coming back to me wanting to work. So I was like planting the seed. So that paid me another lesson in terms of like, you're not going to see immediate results in business. Like, people before we start this podcast, a lot of people get so carried away with, you know, like shiny object syndrome of, right, this coaching is going to be amazing, or this agency, whatever it is in business. 3 months later, 6 months later, they've hit that dip inevitably. They haven't done as well as you thought they were going to do. And they get discouraged. They stop posting. They stop trying. It's like, man, you need to persevere to the point that people think you're an overnight success, right? You know how it is. So I was just like, I wasn't focused on the outcome. I was focused on the process. So I was like, how good of a coach can I get? Like, how good can I be with my clients? How much knowledge can I start learning and stuff? And just taking courses, podcasts, YouTube videos, everything. Because there wasn't also courses for peak performance at this time. There's no qualification peak performance. So the best thing you'll get is like a sports science degree or something similar. I wasn't prepared to go to uni for 3-4 years at this age, and I personally think for most people it's a rip-off. If I'm honest, I think the skills to get to like 6-figure, 7-8 figure, I think you can buy them much cheaper than just going for 3-4 years.
Uni,
Yeah, and I'm not against uni. Like if you want to be a lawyer or a doctor, then you need that, right? But for a lot of people, I think just go for it for the sake of it. But for me, it was like I'm not doing that, man. Like the skills that I need, like I spent like 5K on a course and stuff, like, and that was just as much cheaper than uni, and I gained a lot more in terms of just from that course, like what I can applicably, like what's applicable right now, what can I actually use, right? So that again learn that lesson of like invest in yourself. Like every time I've invested in myself, I've always seen like pretty much a direct return. So I was always like, invest in yourself, stay tunnel vision with this, and be patient. And then eventually I had a few clients who were into fitness, but they also, they had like a side business, or first one, his name was Lars, and he had a marketing agency, and he struggled with brain fog as well. And I had this as well from a young age, and I always just thought it was my ADHD or something, or it just is what it is. And then I started learning more about how it's not just about macronutrients, like food literally affects your gut, which has a direct effect on your brain through the gut-brain axis. And so I just kind of, again, went full autistic mode, really learned all this stuff, applied it to myself, helped my clients with it as well, had some proof in the pudding, and then just kind of scaled from that, and then just thought like, look, this is a genuine problem that people are having, especially with the rise and grind mentality. Like the hustle culture is very like, people almost brag about how little sleep they get. Like, oh, I only got 3 hours of sleep last night, mate. I'm like, you're an idiot. Like, prioritize your sleep, man, because you'll actually be able to perform at a higher level for longer. So it's a fallacy. Like, I know it seems like a bit of a paradox, but so I just started prioritizing my sleep more.
See, for me, listening to all of that, it's so interesting, because for so long, and I've certainly got better at it now, for me, and I'm sure many people listening that are trying to start businesses and build businesses, is that, you know, that whole hustle culture, that staying up till 3 a.m. like I've done.
We've all done it.
And it gets to a point where you actually, throughout the day, you are working till 3 a.m, but the next day you're doing fuck all, because your productivity is so low. If you could, because I saw one of your posts a while back where there's a picture of you sitting at your desk with your top off, and you look so tired, and I think a lot of people that are probably listening that want to start a business or currently doing a side hustle, if you could go back and give yourself one bit of advice to that person that was sitting at the desk then, what would that be? And for anyone that's listening that could benefit from that advice?
I think just don't take it so seriously, because I feel like when you get too tight of a grip of something, it almost eludes you. You're trying too hard, right? Like, work hard, put the time in for the side hustle, but don't forget to also enjoy the process, because you are doing this so that you can live a better life. And what's the point in that if you use this vehicle basically destroys you, so you can't live a good life? Like, if you're stressed because of your business, then to me, you don't really have a business, you have a job, because you have to be there, right? You feel like compelled, like ball and chain. So I was like, that's one thing I'd say is like, I remember arguing with Amy a few times and stuff, because like, oh, they've got to get this thing done and blah, blah, blah. Like, the thing about business, it's never done. There's always something to be done.
Always something else, isn't there?
So I was just like, hang on a minute. You are inventing these to-do lists in your head. Like, no one but yourself is putting this pressure on. And you didn't want a boss because of this pressure and because of like being told what to do. And yet here you are being your own master in terms of like forcing yourself to be at this desk. Like you're thinking that you don't have time to get changed and sleep. And I was like, this is not right. So that's one thing I'd say is just like health first, business second. Because every time I've done that, every time I've done in terms of like, I've thought about skipping the gym because maybe this client needs something or I've got a call coming. I've always been like, no, postpone the call, or like just I know it's difficult because you want to work hard and you want to do well in business. And I get that, it's your baby. Like when you have a business, it's your baby, you do anything.
Yeah.
But you have to put yourself first, because you are the one that's going to be the driving force behind that business, especially in the first few years of the business before you've delegated and outsourced stuff. You've got to be in peak physical and mental condition. Your nutrition's got to be in point. Your sleep has to be amazing. Like, you get an Oura ring, like invest in yourself in terms of like your health. And that will provide like the strongest foundations I've found. Like the times in which I've actually chose to go to the gym instead of working a little bit longer, I actually feel better the next day. Rather, if we go to an alternative universe, I didn't go to the gym, I got the work done, but now I've gone to bed late. And now, I'm stressed the next day because I'm sleep deprived and I'm making worse decisions. So think of it as always like one step back, 5 steps forward with your health. Like it really is everything. And I think people are starting to clock onto this now. Like this hustle culture is starting to dissipate, and health optimization is in, is what we say. Like hustle culture is out, health optimization is in. And I think that is the way forward in terms of how you trim the fat off a business and you run it smartly, not just hard.
So from the start then, from like if you were starting your business, would you say focus on that health and your well-being and your productivity first, rather than maybe some people would say for the first couple of years, graft, like no sleep, just put the work in for 2 years, get it to a place where you want it to be, and then you can sort of take a back seat, maybe then focus on your health. But you'd say actually focus on your health from the start and then reap the rewards later down the line?
Yeah, I would. And I know that's like a very difficult thing.
It's a very different approach, isn't it?
Yeah, and people like
you hear online.
And people like, nah, man, like I need to do this. Like it's got to be done now, the work. But it's like if you've set up your business in which that you can't put your health first, you're not running, like I said, a business. You're running a job. Like you're tied to this business. It shouldn't be like that. And I know in the beginning, starting a business, like within the first 3 years, most businesses, I think 90% go under.
Yeah.
So I get like that you feel really rushed and like we've got to make this work, but at the end of the day, it's about working smarter, not harder. And there's no point, grinding your head against the wall when you could just be, putting some oil on that wall and be a lot smoother, right? So I know it's a difficult choice to make, but I do think like when you are healthier, you're cognitively, you're sharper. You're less stressed, which is the biggest one. You don't feel as burnt out, so you can actually work for longer should you choose so. And if you've got like a productivity system in place in which you can work smarter, not just harder, then obviously that's going to be easier on your mind and your body, so you can work for longer. You're not going to get resentful. You're not going to be stressed outside your business, like arguing with your partner. So I know it's difficult, and I'm sure there are some nights where maybe you just had to stay up till like 11 p.m. Okay, but as long as you acknowledge that and be like, right, look, tomorrow, like that's not cool. Like you're going to go and do something for your health now tomorrow, right? So I'm not saying I'm an angel or like I'm perfect at this stuff. Like in the beginning, I made that mistake, and I'm sure even now, like there's times where I worked a bit too late then, and I need to come back to my values and not be a hypocrite, because every time I do, I always feel so much better, and business genuinely does prosper. In the beginning, it's really difficult because you're just trying to get it off the ground. But I also think in the beginning, don't put too much pressure on yourself to get it off the ground, because what I did, I was doing like a few shifts as a PT. And on the side, I would do my coaching, and that way it wasn't too stressed, because like, well, if the coaching flops, I've got the part-time job. I can take more shifts, right? And people want to live with this, like, it sounds really romantic, like, oh, I just took the plunge and I went for it, and it's like that sounds really good and cinematic for a movie or story, but you're putting yourself into a corner of pressure, and if you don't succeed, like, then you're just gonna, the amount of pressure, you either, diamonds are made under pressure, or like you're gonna get crushed. So I would rather not put yourself in that situation. Just put a few eggs in this basket, and then once it starts taking off, then start ramping up those systems for that. But in the beginning, I would say, do it slowly. Like, get yourself a part-time job, man. Like, what's wrong with that? Like, work at Tesco's if you need to.
Yeah,
I completely agree. Like when I started my business, I was doing like delivery driving in the evenings and on the weekends, and it's just you feel like a bit of a weight off your shoulder, because you know that at the end of the month everything is covered, and you can actually just focus on it. I think so many people, like you said, they'll go from, like similar to how you did, working a corporate job, and said, right, I'm just going to make the plunge. I'm going to make that risk. But actually having a bit of a comfort blanket is so useful, just to be able to sort of ensure that you can still survive and then run the business. And I'm sure then start to focus on health as well as just sort of running and pushing that business.
Absolutely, because we know that stress essentially shuts down areas of the brain associated with creativity. I believe it's the prefrontal cortex. So when you're stressed, you literally can't think straight. You make worse decisions. You make rash decisions because out of stress, out of desperation. So if you want to make the best decisions, you need to be logical, rational, and level-headed. And putting yourself under a deadline or putting too much pressure on yourself is the complete opposite of what you should be doing, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because like in today's day and age, you get like the likes of Gary Vee. There's quite a lot of people out there who promote the get up early, graft, and then you get this opinion as well. It just shows that there's so many differing opinions, and then like what do you actually, what route you take.
There's several ways to skin a cat, and if you look at Gary Vee as well, to be honest, like after he's like 40 or something, coming up to 50s, he didn't look the best. Now he's got himself a health coach, and now he's lost the weight and stuff. But that's what I'm saying. It accumulated over the years. It might not get you now, but being sleep deprived by even, I think it's by like just getting like, I think 7 hours of sleep, or I think it's 6 hours of sleep consecutively for 7 days is the equivalent of being sleep deprived for an entire day. So how many people get by in 6 hours of shitty sleep, or even 7 hours of probably shitty sleep as well? That's going to accumulate. It might not get you now because you're young, but after 25, like when basically everything starts to kind of like slowly decline, it's going to catch you. And I want to be fit and healthy in my 40s because I want a graph now in terms of I'm healthy, I have the energy to do it, so that I can live a life later where I don't have to like be as like on top of my health in the sense that to be able to push for so long, right? I want to be able to, when I'm in my 40s, like business is more like a not a part-time job, but you just literally do it because it's for fun, or like you just put in your hands in a few pots. It's not like there's pressure on. We've got to make this work. Like, you've already made your money. Now you've got a few projects on. That makes more sense to me to do it that way.
Playing completely devil's advocate here. Do you believe? Let's say there's two people up against each other. One person's working 12 to 15-hour days, 6-7 hours sleep. Yeah. He's in this full mindset of pushing to his absolute max. He's working so hard, he's cutting off everyone, compared to someone that's, let's say, working a 7 or 8 hour day that's more focused on their health first. Over a longer period of time, are you solely confident that although the other person that isn't necessarily putting their health first but is working more hours, putting more output, the person that's focused on their health is going to get quicker and better results?
I think it depends on what you want, and also I think it depends on the context. So if that person's working 12 hours a day every day but they're doing poor work, then they might not necessarily get ahead, right? Whereas if you work 2-3 hours of pure focus, like flow state in the morning, 3-4 hours of just really good planned out day, focused, and then you've got your health for it in the end so you can run longer, I do believe the latter person will get ahead in the long run. Maybe in the beginning it might seem like that guy's pulling ahead, but he's going to have to pay for that later with his health. He's going to get some kind of manifestation in his body of putting on weight or wrinkles on his forehead. It's going to manifest itself in certain ways, and I think that in the long run, you ask any person on their deathbed, like, what's the one thing, like, piece of advice? Everyone's always like, your health. Your health is first, and we all know this, but we don't do it. But I think because we feel pressure, and we see the other guy, like people boast about it, like screenshotting like how much hours they put in, or like got a really busy day today, and like that's great, just as long as make sure you got your health in place, because that's what's going to upholster that in the long run. So I think it's just important to do that, man.
I think like both of those people you were talking about will probably get to the same level down the long run, in the long run, but the person who focused on their health can actually reap the rewards of,
and who enjoyed the process more. Right, because as Connie, as it said to you earlier, like it is the journey. It is like the hedonic treadmill is always, the goalpost is always going to move. Like it would be the first be your 10K month, then it'd be like, let's go for 15, 20, and then let's start this project. It never ends. Like look at Hormozy. That guy, like he could easily retire, man, but because it just never ends. Like Jeff Bezos, like it's it's not, it's a means to an end. So I wouldn't get too caught up in like, we've got to make this work, because at the end of the day, man, if you're working smartly or smarter with systems, it's inevitable. If you put in that work, 3 or 4 hours of deep work every day, quality work, it's going to happen. Maybe it won't happen as quick as the other guy, but you'll actually have your health in check when you do reach that finish line. And that guy's going to have wrinkles. That guy's going to be like, oh, I've got to pay for a health coach, or I've got to go and get whatever tests and everything. And it's like, you actually enjoyed the journey more because you had energy for your misses afterwards. You had, energy for whatever it was, like go and play football or the weekend or something, instead of being like, no, I've got to do a 10-hour day again on a Sunday. It's like, look, if you have to be doing 12 hours every day to launch this business, I don't think that's a smart model. I think that's a dogmatic way of thinking. I think people are going to start waking up to this way.
What would you say then are your sort of 3 top tips to have a productive day, to have that good first work block in the morning? What sets you up for that?
Well, number one is sleep. I mean, as cliche as it is, like, please get your sleep on point. And sometimes we've had clients in the past, or if we're speaking to a potential client, how's your sleep? I'll say, how's your sleep? And they'll be like, yeah, I sleep good, like self-report. And it's like, I always say it's the equivalent of saying you have money in the bank without checking your balance. Like, you don't know till you check. So we need to get that categorical data. We need to be seeing, like, are you actually getting good enough REM sleep, deep sleep? Are you restless throughout the night? Maybe you have undiagnosed sleep apnea. Like, there's so many things. So we need to get that straight first. Like, invest in your sleep. I always say you vote with your wallet what you care about. So just get an Oura Ring, whatever you need to, a Whoop band, an Apple smartwatch, whatever, and start tracking your sleep. Start seeing the difference it makes in terms of correlating with an 85 plus sleep score with how much work you're able to get done, how much more focused and willpower you have. So get that right first. The next thing I would say to be more productive is actually have a system in place. So don't just wake up and the thing is with systems, I'm always about simplicity. Simplicity wins every time. You'll get some people like having like these really complicated or amazing systems, but they're very convoluted to follow. And I find that when something is complex, if you don't follow it to a T, and then you inevitably miss something or mess up, you end up just like fobbing it off because like, oh, I failed now. Whereas if it's simple, you're more likely to stick to it, right? So I would say get yourself a simple but effective productivity system to start planning your day, planning your week. And what you could do is just like reverse engineer your goal for the month or the year or whatever. You could do it for the year, then do it in quarterly, then monthly, then weekly. But then we know that obviously things change throughout the year. Maybe your plans change, but just basically have a rough goal, at least like some kind of compass to guide you, and then have a productivity system, which is your vehicle to get you to that. In this case, say like the productivity system is the boat and the goal is the lighthouse, right? You need a good boat. You need to have like good sailors, strong, healthy. So have a productivity system for that, which is the boat. And I would keep it simple. So the way my productivity system basically roughly works, it's nothing special. It's by, I basically took it from Dave Allen's book, Getting Things Done, and then put my own spin on it with an app called Todoist. There's a YouTube video about this, you can go watch it. But basically, your day starts the night before, I found. So I have a shutdown routine about 7 p.m. And then when that happens, no more client work. I don't care if the clients need me. Like, I've got to put myself first so I can come to you first tomorrow. They're not going to die. And then I'll plan my day, and just roughly, right? So the way I plan it is just in terms of I'll perform a brain dump. So get everything out of your head. Because the most common thing I find with entrepreneurs or business owners, they say, oh, Alex, like as soon as I try to go to bed, my mind's racing. I can't think straight.
I say this all the time.
Exactly, right? And I had this issue for ages. I thought it was anxiety and stuff, but I find that the issue is multifaceted. I think one thing is we live in a society with like an influx of information, and we're never actually just, like when I go on the tube, the underground here, I try and be present. I try not to go on my phone because that's the easy thing to just grab an instant gratification, information, keep me entertained. And we're never actually giving our minds time to just sit down and just allow things to bubble up, like thoughts and stuff. And the only time we're actually allowed to do that is when we actually go to bed. And then because it's so foreign to us, we're not used to it. And like, why are all these thoughts coming up? It's like, you would have had those thoughts, man, if you would have just enjoyed that bus journey a bit more, be a bit more present or something, right? So the way I help get around that is performing a brain dump in the evenings. So that's literally just write everything down on a piece of paper or a digital note-taking system. Every single little thing in my head, like, oh, I've got to go food shopping tomorrow. Everything, like, think of your brain as like RAM in a computer. And you want to offload all the tasks on that RAM by just either closing them or whatever. And that's what you want to do with that brain dump. Everything out. And then if you want to go a step further so that you can ease your mind when you go into bed, make a rough plan. So just, you basically, it's a 3-step process. So you got, you want to put it out on a piece of paper. So that's just an inbox. We call it an inbox. And then you want to clarify what those tasks are. So what is it in terms of a priority? When does it need to be done? And then you want to organize it. That's the 3rd step. So then you want to organize it to the day, to the week. And by doing that, you're just basically saying, okay, like here's an idea, here's a task. I'm gonna clarify you. I'm gonna organize you over there. I'm gonna clarify you, organize you over there. And when you do that, those thoughts that are in your head, you're basically taking them out and putting them in little boxes or into your calendar. And you'll find that when you go to bed, the things that you maybe ruminate on, you don't do so much because like, well, we've got a plan for that, so you can chill out. That's happening Wednesday, man. It's fine. And if you still have those thoughts, meditation I find is really good. Yeah, it teaches you to be okay with thoughts coming up, because people or clients that start meditation sometimes like, I can't do it, man. I keep wandering. It's like, yeah, that's working, because the whole point of meditation is to notice when you become distracted. You have to become cognizant of that, and that's when you notice it's worked. And then bring yourself back to the breath, and just doing that routinely is going to entrain your brain to be able to do that whenever you become distracted in work, whenever you're lying in bed at night and you're like, oh yeah, shit, I'm thinking about that thought again. There's that thought pattern, and you can break that pattern, and thus you can get to sleep easier. So that's the second thing, is having a really good productivity system. The last one, I would say put yourself under some kind of hormetic stress. So hormetic stress is basically an acute amount of stress. You have chronic stress, it's not what we want. We have that enough. Hormetic stress, so I would say that's either cold plunges, sauna, like you were doing, HIIT training or resistance training, or a bit of a cardio run, like exercise, right? That's the ways you can put yourself under hormetic stress. What that's going to do is allow your body to cope with stress or stressful situations because you're becoming familiar with that adrenaline and norepinephrine response, like cold plunges. So that has a positive knock-on effect to like when you are doing a presentation or an important call or under a lot of stress, like you are familiar with that adrenaline, so you're much more able to channel it. So I think that's really good for productivity, because if you're really stressed, you can't think clear, man, like we were saying. So if you can teach your body by improving your HRV, your heart rate variability, through hormetic stress protocols, then you'll be good in the office as well, or with mental tasks. So I think those three things I would say.
For me, I have to say, you may agree, but a lot of what you were saying there in terms of when you're getting into bed and all these thoughts rushing through your head and then trying meditate, like a lot of that can resonate with myself. Like I've tried, for example, I tried meditating in the past, and for me, my instant thought was, oh, it doesn't work for me because I just wander.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, you're saying that is working because you're noticing that you're wandering, and that's all part of the process, which is really interesting. Like I've never looked at meditating in that format.
Yeah, that's the way to keep yourself motivated. Is I still get distracted now, and honestly, man, I fobbed it off for a good 6 months of trying it. I was like, I'm just not a meditator.
Yeah.
But I persisted, and I was like, stop looking at the outcome, because people get caught in that trap of, I want to feel psychedelic, or like I didn't feel anything, and it's like, stop chasing an outcome and just do it. Like I always think it's like akin to brushing your teeth. You don't particularly enjoy brushing your teeth. You do it out of habit, and you do it because it's good for your personal hygiene. Think of this as meditation is good for your mental hygiene, especially in this world, this society. So don't do it thinking that I need to enjoy this. In fact, I would reframe it as, this is going to be boring, right? And just accept it, be stoic, and just tick the box. And eventually, you'll build up that habit, and the positive effects, I would say, they creep up on you subtly, like after months and months, like after a year of me doing it. It was only when I stopped did I have a reference point of, okay, now that I've stopped, I can now have a reference point of, because the gradual, subtle positive effects were so gradual, I didn't really notice it. I was like, it doesn't work. It wasn't until I stopped that I noticed I was much more short-fused. I would get much more reactive about something bothering me, right? So the whole key of meditation is like the gap between stimuli and response. So the Stoics believed as well in this. They thought that what separated you from animals was our ability to reason. So you can also choose how to willingly respond to something. You can reason with it. But people often don't do this. Like if you see a negative comment on social media, you would just react, right? Whereas for me with meditation, for example, through practicing it, you can see that comment for what it is, broaden that gap. So here's the stimuli, the negative comment, and here's my response, however I choose to be. You can broaden that and then say, that person's obviously in a lot of pain otherwise when they put that negative comment, right? So you don't take it personal. So you have that time to choose how you want to react, and that obviously has, you can transfer that to any aspect of your life, right? Negative news, or someone giving you shit, or whatever the case, you're stressed, like that's where the power is. Like you make better decisions, you don't snap as much, you learn to take like a metacognitive approach of like seeing yourself like a view from above, and just noticing, almost like you're watching a movie or a game, and you're like, almost laugh at like these negative events happening to you. Try and find humor in that. Choose that option rather than just be reactive. So meditation, although it is bloody boring, right? It is so.
There's no denying it.
I've never tried it, but I hear it all the time about how good it can be. So it's something I do want to give a go. You said you stopped. Have you gone back to doing it now? Then is it something you do every single day?
Not every single day. This is the thing. Like you don't have to be a saint about it, and I think people think that I'm some kind of like health monk, but I still go out and have nice foods. I still, go out and drink very, very occasionally, like probably every 3-4 months, like, and not much, but I still have that, everything in moderation within moderation itself. So with meditation, there are days where I've missed it, but I don't beat myself up and think, right, the streak's over. Same with brushing your teeth. I don't stop, just brush my teeth for the rest of the month. I get back on it, right?
Yeah.
So the same with meditation, like just get back on it the next day, and then just start to build that back up. But like I said, I can go for about, I think 3-4 days, and then I notice my thoughts are a bit more erratic. Okay. They're a bit more, I'm more reactive. The effects are gone, and I'm like, I need to get back on there.
People that are potentially listening and thinking like, oh, this all sounds good, but it sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
What are the actual benefits in the sense of how better do you feel after going through this productivity system, after sleeping well, after meditating?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people think, God, that is a lot of work. But to you may feel like, yes, it is a lot of work, but the feeling that you get of waking up every morning feeling this way or not being reactive, I'm sure outweighs the actual work that you have to put in to be able to do it.
Yeah, I always take the reframe of, I don't enjoy meditating. I enjoy having meditated with anything, or like reading, for example. I don't particularly enjoy reading. I think I've got ADHD, right? I'm bouncing around all over the place. But I always remember, like, do it for your future self, and almost think of, I always like to have, I think this is a Stoic practice as well, what I learned, but you want to have, I think it's called contemplation of the sage. So you always want to imagine like one of your idols. Like for me, it was Marcus Aurelius. So I would always imagine a situation like, what would he do in this instance? Would he stay in bed in his sheets and all comfortable and warm? Or would he actually get up and do the cold plunge or do the difficult thing and have that difficult conversation, right? So that's a good way to kind of motivate yourself to do the meditation. And in terms of like, yes, it is a bit of work, but anything worth having is always going to be a bit of a work. Having a great physique, that's why it's so universally symbolized as hard work, because you can't cheat it. When you walk down the street, you get looks, probably mostly men, to be honest, other men. That's how it works. But it's because they understand how fucking difficult that was to get that physique.
Spent
right?
to get there.
Yeah, you can't cheat that stuff, man. So same with meditation. You're not going to cheat. I mean, you could just take psychedelics, but I would say, just persist with it, and your values have to be in line with as well, like what you want. If your values aren't in line in terms of like your nutrition, or you don't value your health, and again, I believe you shift your values through your decisions every day. You cast a vote for the person you want to be through your habits, through your decisions. So in the beginning, it will be difficult to cast that vote to like, I'm a person that meditates, right? It's only a few votes, but after a year, you've casted like 365 votes. That's going to grow. That you're going to start to shift your value more so, because you act how you perceive yourself, right? So if you see yourself as someone like, I'm someone that meditates, you're more likely to do it. So there is friction, and there are ways you can make it easier, like habit stacking and making it more appealing. But at the end of the day, I find that people who are serious about meditating, the people who aren't serious always ask me like, what's the best app to meditate? What's the best way? It's like, forget about that and just start. Like same with training. You don't wait to train until you found out the best training routine. You just start in the gym, fumble around and work it out. And same with meditation, because the positive effects will eventually get there anyway. So you might as well just start. So for anyone wanting to start, I would recommend, it depends on what everyone has, different preferences. Like there's gratitude, there's metta, loving kindness, there's mindfulness. I think Vipassana is really good for mindfulness, and a really easy way to get into it, because it's so simple to do. Like there's like a bell like every 2 minutes or something to remind you to come back to the breath when you become distracted. So it's quite easy to be guided. And just YouTube, man. YouTube or Balance app is really good. Yeah, that's what we use for the clients. Othership as well is really good as well. And that also has breath work as well, which is another thing. But yeah, that's where I would recommend getting started, is just start at like maybe 10 minutes a day. But I often find the sweet spot is 15 to 20 minutes as well. Like after 10 minutes, your brain starts to calm down, and then you get into that meditative state where you get like, it can be quite trippy sometimes. You're observing your thoughts, which is quite trippy to observe. But yeah, it can be good. You can have good sessions, but obviously, I'm not gonna lie, more often than not, it's pretty boring. But is it worth the outcome for me? And does it make me better at business? Does it make me a better partner? Absolutely. So it's worth it to me.
Definitely.
Morning, evening?
I would say the best time is morning, just because at the end of the day, the last thing you want to do really is sit there and be bored. You kind of want to just switch off in terms of like go and spend time with your partner, or maybe watch Netflix, whatever. And that's fine as long as you have your blue light blockers on and all that stuff. But I find morning is easiest for me, because I'm less likely to be disturbed. I actually have a do not disturb sign on my door for Amy. I put it on red, like, don't
really?
Yeah,
I need one. I need one of those.
She comes in all the time, like, what have I told you?
Yeah.
Like, I'm in the middle of my deep work block. But yeah, that's the best. Evening can work if you're someone that tends to have racing thoughts. I find just the best time that works for you. I find for most people it's the morning.
I was going to ask you actually about, like, you mentioned there like deep work blocks and like flow states in particular. Yeah. For me, I've always dabbled with different sort of routines to try and stay in a flow state for as long as possible, and I feel like I've got one now after experimenting a couple of different routes of doing so. Yeah. But for people that are listening that perhaps don't even know or have even heard the term flow state before, what would the best way for you to describe a flow state and how someone can actually tap into one?
Yeah. So flow state, I would define it as simply as when time begins to dissolve.
Okay.
And you are tunnel vision on a task, and you can most easily replicate this with extreme sports. This is why a lot of people like to do extreme sports is because it forces you to be in flow state. Otherwise, you're gonna fall off that wave when you're surfing, or you're gonna hit that rail when you're skateboarding. Right? This is why they do that. Or race driving, right? There's a clear consequence. Otherwise, you don't get into flow state. To not get into flow state. But I would describe it in which, like I said, time begins to dissolve away, and the work is almost effortless. It's almost like I noticed this most commonly for me because I like drawing when I was younger. In art class, the class would go so quick, and I didn't know what that was. And that was obviously because my brain waves were changing from beta to alpha. And it's much easier just to do the work, and that's when you're firing cognitively on all cylinders. You're at your most creative capacity. So how would you do that? So the biggest thing I think to realize is like the antithesis to flow state is distraction. I believe it takes about 50 minutes to get into flow state apparently, and if you get distracted, you've kind of reset that process. So that's why if my missus comes in, I'm like, well, I told you about this.
Yeah, because I notice it even if I get up to go to the toilet, it then takes me, I could be in a real, feels like a tunnel vision zone. And then just something as simple as me getting up to go to the toilet, when I come back to my desk, my instant thought is maybe picking up my phone or doing something different. So I'd be very interested in how I can stay in that for as long as possible.
Sure, man. So the first thing I would do is audit your environment, which is what I recommend. So audit your environment in terms of distractions. The biggest one is your phone. Like even for me, it still gets me, right? There's still ways you can get around it, right? But audit your environment. So phone is like I always think about in terms of friction. So how can I make it most difficult to do the unwanted or undesired habit, which is phone usage? Put it in another room as far away and turn it off. That's 2 friction points. So that when you need to go to the toilet and you finish your business, you don't think, right, I'm just gonna have a look at those notifications, because once you do it, it's got you in its grasp.
You're sucked into the chat.
And next thing you know, it's an hour down, you're on TikTok. Like, what am I doing?
TikTok, looking at sheep or something like that.
Yeah. It's like, I'm supposed to be running a business. So, no one's exempt from this stuff. Like, they have the world's smartest psychologists working on these apps. So you're not like weak-minded. You just need to govern this stuff because it's highly addictive, man. So I just turn it off in the first place. You can put app blockers on and stuff. Opal's a very good app blocker. But put it really far away. And then if you've mapped out your day the night before, it's much easier to get back to the plan because you've already mapped it out. And also kind of know yourself as well. So if you know that you kind of repeat that pattern of every time I go to the toilet, I go on my phone, well then put that friction up of putting your phone in. You can get like phone boxes as well, like with a lock and stuff. If you need to do it, like we've had clients do that, like severe phone addictions, like mate, you can't open that stuff. Like once it's locked, you can get really good ones that just don't open. You have to smash it.
I bet you've had some people
throwing it at the wall.
I need my phone.
Give me my Instagram likes. Yeah. So just doing that as well, and just blocking out. What I like to do is gamify my deep work as well. With I should have an affiliate link for this, because the amount of people have been like, "Where's that timer from? I need to get it." And then people tag me, or like they send me a picture of like, "I've got one." It's a kitchen timer on Amazon. Yeah.
I've got one.
Yeah. That's an affiliation. Yeah. So that's really good in gamifying it. Like I'm just going to put that on for 30 minutes or 60 minutes. Some people like to do even 90-minute blocks, whatever the top. If it's like editing, for me personally, I enjoy editing. I can go like 90 minutes easy if I don't need to toilet, right? So, but if it's like admin or something, I know it's a really difficult task. I'm like, I'll just do 30-minute stints and give myself a break. Right? Work with yourself here, negotiate. So put that bad boy on for about whatever time you want, and I'll put like another cue on, like binaural beats is really good for me. Or I like listening to classical music. I don't know why. It just might sound a bit of a psycho, but I love working to that stuff. So that gets me and helps cue my brain to get into that flow state. And then I've obviously got my tasks mapped out on my Todoist app, so I know exactly, okay, I need to be on this for an hour, right? And you will find that your brain will want to, I don't know if you guys have ever had this, but you'll be working, and when there's a difficult block, or like you're faced with a block, and then you have a knee-jerk reaction to go like, and then if your phone's not there though,
or I start to think of like, what is everything I could possibly do before that
active procrastination
task?
It's called. So you start making a logo, something else. Hang on a minute,
the next task, but
all of a sudden I'm cleaning my desk, like,
of course, man, and
finding ways to get out of that one task that you have to do.
That's the thing, and that's normal. It's fine, right? We're human, but it's just realizing that if you've mapped out your work block, then you can keep yourself accountable, because you can revert back to the list, and you're like, hang on a minute, this is not what we're supposed to be doing. Like, what's the thing that's going to push the needle forward today for me? And if you've mapped out your day, you can keep yourself accountable. Whereas if you don't do that, then you can always be like, oh, I've been productive today, I've done this, done that. It's like, yeah, but that didn't move the needle forward in the business. And often the case, it's the mundane, boring work that just needs to be ticked. So I would recommend getting that done first thing in the morning, because that's often when your willpower is at its highest. Like, you're less likely to be disturbed. You haven't like drained your brain essentially of dopamine from like constant scrolling. So that's the best way to go about it in terms of flow state. Set up cues. So I've trained my brain to be like, when I hear binaural beats, when I've closed that door, when I put that analog timer on. And for me personally, it's green tea. Instead of coffee, I like green tea. I prefer like the cleaner energy, because it has L-theanine in there, which helps basically smoothen out the jitteriness you can get from caffeine. And that just, I put that on for 60 minutes, and I negotiate with myself. I say, look, you got to sit here. I don't care how bored you are. If you're bored, you can go over. It's like, some people like to go quite extreme to like put in another chair in the room, and like you can sit there until you feel like your dopamine levels drop to the point that you want to actually go and do the boring work again. I personally just sit there until I get it done. And there's a great book by, is it Turning Pro? I think it's Turning Pro by Paul. I can't remember. It's you'll know the book. It's very popular, but it's called Turning Pro. And he goes on about how, is it The Art of War? It's The Art of War. He's got two books. One's called The Art of War, or the War on Art, or the War of Art. I'm butchering it, but you'll know the book I'm on about. And he goes on about how he puts on a great metaphor of, I think it's like distraction or procrastination is like this muse that, I think it's this muse that it wants to take you away from your goals. And that's a good way to always see it. Like, whenever I'm distracted, I'm like, that's that fucking muse. It's a good way to kind of like make it.
You sort of make it into like a devil, like a person and that's trying to distract you and pull you away.
Exactly. And that's easier for your brain to comprehend, to be like, I have something wrong with me, or I just don't want to do it. It's like, hang on a minute, like, just remember that little cue. And that's a good little way to make it easier for yourself to bring yourself back to that flow state.
Sorry, go on.
Is it like the amount of time that you set yourself to do a task is the amount of time it will take you to do that task?
Parkinson's law.
That's it.
It depends. So what I do is I always like to, there's a few ways to go about this, right? You can I always like to overcompensate, because we often, I can't remember what it's called, there's another law, but basically we underestimate how long it takes to get things done. That'd be an hour. Next thing you know, it's like 3-4 hours later, right? Is that Parkinson's law? I think it's two compounding things. I think it's Parkinson's law. I also think it's not having enough constraints. So I always say, think in terms of constraints. Any of these tools that I mentioned, I always say refer to them as tools. These things aren't like absolutes that you have to stick to all the time, like cold plunges and stuff. Like, they're all tools. Same with these constraints. So my favorite constraint, if I want to avoid Parkinson's law, go to a coffee shop, take your laptop, and don't bring a charger. And then you'll find that because you've got that constraint on, like, I've only got half an hour charger, I need to get these emails out, or I need to get this client work done, you'll get it done. Whereas, if you know you've got a lot of time in the day, you'll find that time fills, the task just fills the time, however much time you have, right? So that's the way I would go about it, is putting constraints on yourself.
And with Parkinson's law, that sort of makes sense to me. I sometimes find that that time period can be stretched out purely down to perfectionism as well, and always the finer details that really, like you said about pushing the needle forward, don't actually matter. But for me, there's been often times, and I'm a lot better at it now, but it's about acknowledging that this is never going to be exactly perfect. And the longer you look at something, the more you're going to tweak it. I'm sure you do it when you're editing. The longer that you look at something, I don't like that. Well, I liked it 5 seconds ago, and there's that sort of stretches that time period 100%.
out. I always say perfectionism is procrastination in disguise. I didn't always say that. I robbed that, but
I think I've heard that
take
before.
It as your own. Take it as your own.
I'll take that as my own. But I resonate with that so much, because give a perfect example, like editing for me. I did this thing like the other week. I can get a video out in like a day if I need to, right? And I've just done it actually, my latest video. I just got it out. It was rough. There wasn't the best edit, whatever. Like, who cares, right? It's still good enough. The quality is there. We're not like some big YouTube channel yet. And then there was another video the week before, and because I had loads of time, I got it done really early. I was like, we're on time for once. And then lo and behold, Parkinson's law got me, and I started like, maybe I can just make the B-roll a bit nicer. I can color grade this, and then this title's not as good. Next thing you know, I only just made the deadline. I was like, it got me again. So it's putting constraints on yourself.
And so many people do it. Like, when I speak to people that are just starting out businesses, they'll spend 3 weeks creating a logo, or like 4 weeks planning about doing something, when actually it's like you said about doing the little daily things that are going to actually push the needle forward. And that perfectionism, I say that people tell me I did the exact same thing. I took ages just to create my logo and make sure everything was perfect before I put it out there in the world. but actually, if you can just commit to something and stick to it, it's so much more beneficial in the long term, I think.
100%, big time.
You mentioned stoicism a lot. It's something I actually discovered because of you guys.
Awesome.
What to the people sort of listening, how would you sort of describe stoicism, and where did you sort of start that journey with it?
Yeah, I actually stumbled upon it the first lockdown.
Yeah.
Quite ironically enough. Needed that stoicism to keep me strong. No, I was good. I was fine. I've always actually gravitated towards that kind of mindset anyway, but I didn't know it was a name.
Okay.
I didn't know there's an actual philosophy for it. So I was like, oh my God, this is an actual thing. Like, there's one of the practices in stoicism is like negative visualization. So you can imagine like the worst possible scenario, like, I don't know, God forbid, like your parents have, you lost a loved one or something, right? And you really vividly imagine it and in minute detail, and then you snap yourself back to reality. You'll find yourself just so grateful for your current situation, even though nothing's changed, and that's powerful to like give yourself a kick up the arse and stop being a victim. So I did that already quite naturally when I was younger. I don't know why. I used to just imagine bad stuff and then be like, oh, I'm so grateful for where I'm at. I always thought I was a weird kid, like, I was just a natural stoic. Yeah. So I was just a young little Marcus Aurelius. So I stumbled upon some lectures on YouTube, and I just, again, for autistic mode, watched all the lectures and stuff, and I found a lot of utility in it for me, for myself. And then obviously COVID hit, and I realized, I was like, people need to hear about this stuff, man. Especially like a lot of younger lads, like feeling like their life's been taken away from them. Like, focus on what you can control. Like, that was just so pivotal point for me. So that's how I stumbled upon it. And I probably read like 7 or 8 books on stoicism, all the good books, and then did the journaling stuff and the lectures, and then like obviously kind of taught it a little bit as well through RET, just to kind of get the information out, which helps solidify it. And then I always refer back to it. Like, if I'm ever like find myself complaining or moaning or being a bit of a victim, it's like, bring yourself back to those principles or morals of stoicism. But yeah, stoicism is like a way of life, and the way people mistake it as like being nihilistic or miserable or like, non-reactive or no emotion. It's not about that. It's about being able to channel and control your emotions, not the other way around. So it's not that you're not happy or you don't get any pleasure or joy from life. It's that you're not swayed by emotion. You have control over how you want to react, whatever the situation, no matter how dire it can be, which is easier said than done. But I think if more people recruited that mindset, you'd be so much better off in life.
I look at it like all the time, and I'm stuck in traffic. I can't do anything to control that. But I remember like years ago, I'd get really angry, start lashing out.
Road rage.
Yeah, hitting the roof of the car or whatever. And now I'm like, look, come on. All right, you might be late, but there's nothing I can do about this right now. So just try and channel that and just try and be a little bit more zen.
It's so tricky though. Like,
it's hard.
I do it so much with business, and we spoke before the podcast about like having an emotional attachment to things. Like, if things go wrong in the business, for me, I've got such an emotional attachment to it that even though it's out of my control, there still feels so much sort of weight on me. But yeah, after hearing you guys talk about it, I definitely want to sort of give that a shot.
If someone was to sort of start their sort of journey into it, where would they go? Somewhere like Ryan Holiday or somewhere like that on YouTube? Or
Ryan Holiday is pretty good. I think Ryan Holiday is a good option. I think you've got to read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius first and foremost. That's the Bible of Stoicism, really, in that sense. How to Think Like a Roman Empire, or a Roman Emperor, sorry, is a really good book by, I forgot his name, but really good book. And the lectures on YouTube are really good. You'll find them. They're really easy. They're not too long. Just take some notes down. And the best way to actually learn about Stoicism and use it is to read about it. Much more like to don't just watch a few videos or a quick summary. You need to. They say in Stoicism that you want to study this. It's not like Meditations, like that book, is not something you just read. It's something you study, and is a bedside book. So you refer back to it. It's a way of life, right? Because you can, like you said, you can get easily swayed again by these emotional things in business. And it's like, hang on a minute. If I remember my training, my Stoic training, it's like, don't be reactive. Like, this is just part of the process.
See, like, speaking to you now, I know you said that you're not, but you seem like very much the finished product in some ways, in terms of like, you've gone through all of this, learning the Stoicism and, your daily routine, your productivity. But when I was watching your video about your transformation, there seemed like the sort of pivotal moment where you really were in the gutter at times. I think I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that, because I think there might be people listening that potentially in the gut. I feel like they don't know where to go with life. They're miserable in their job, and they want to start something new, but they don't know how to quite do it. Speaking to those types of people, what did you do in that scenario?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, like, I think not many people kind of admit this, that it happens. I think it's very common, and I have not so many, but I had quite a few guys particularly like reach out and say like, dude, I'm in this exact situation now, and I thought I was just a fuck up. And it's like, another thing I would say to myself when I was younger, to my younger self, you are like, men are like fine wine. Like you get better as you age. Like, it really does. Like, only in my late 20s now, like, life's actually started getting amazing for me. And in the beginning of my 20s, like, I had no experience. I wasn't very confident. Couldn't really speak to girls how I learning game and stuff. Like, I had not many qualifications, or like, you just have nothing as a young guy, right? Even if you're good looking, like, people want experience, or like the girls want the guy with money or confidence. Like, you don't really, or game, right? And even then, it's like the guy who's got the money and game and chat and 6'2" and like chisel jawline, he's gonna fucking outdo you. And they're on Tinder, so of course they're gonna get to them first. So it's like, your self-esteem is so low if you're doing these apps and stuff. And it's like, I almost think like, your self-esteem is supposed to be low when you've just started out, because why would it be high? You haven't really achieved anything. So don't be hard on yourself, and just keep in mind that there is light, like, it gets better for you. And I find it's quite the inverse, as I would say, if like for women, like, their prime is like 19 to 23, like, they've got the great looks. Like, Andrew Tate, he said, I really resonate with that part of, he said about, the guy on the yacht, like, he had to work his way for that, right? And the women just put an Instagram picture up and boom, you're on it. And that's fair enough. Like, that's just the way the cookie crumbles here. And I'm not going to complain about that. I'm just going to work and get that yacht. So it's like, you've got to remember that, like, I think life as a man really begins in your 30s, because now you've got experience, now you're getting money, now you've got those skills that you lacked, and it gets exciting. If you've looked at your health, which you should be doing, then you're fine. Like, I don't buy that thing in terms of people who are 40, 50, and they're like, oh, your knees are going to go when your oldest son. It's like, I don't buy that. I think that's a mentality. I think if you're looking after yourself, really, truly, like, nutrient dense foods and exercise and all that stuff, I do think, and it's a mindset as well, like, if you feel young in your head as well, rather than making it like a placebo effect or a self-fulfilling prophecy. So that's one thing I would say, is definitely like, think of it, there's light at the end of the tunnel. So like, the advice I would give to you is don't, your brain thinks that this current moment, this is, or like how it feels in this current moment, like, this is how it's going to be indefinitely. Like, if you're in a shit mood, you're like, everything's shit, everything sucks, the business is doing terrible, or like, my life's terrible, I'm so behind on life. You also need to remember, it's amplified by social media, because everybody's like looking around, like, how's he doing? Like, comparison is the thief of joy, and everyone's looking around, how, even personal business, like, how are they doing, right? And then everyone's putting a highlight reel of how they're doing, which is never as good as how they're doing in reality. So then everyone thinks like they're all doing really well and I'm doing terrible. It's like, dude, like, everyone feels left behind, and everything's a struggle for everyone in life, and that's fine. Like, life's supposed to be difficult. It's fine to be down. It's actually, I would say, it's actually okay to be depressed. Use that as fuel. I used it as fuel. I could have very well easily gone on antidepressants, but I thought to myself, like, as sad as it is, I believe this. No one gives a fuck, man. No one really cared that I was depressed. And I could have wallowed in self-pity and been posting about it and milked it for all it was. But then I was like, what's that going to get me? Like, no one's really going to care. So it was either do that and just play video games, or I would channel that energy and that frustration that life was unfair to be like, no, I'm going to fucking make this work. And because I've got no other choice. Like, it's either that or not be the best version of yourself. I think someone said, like, the worst kind of regret or pain is like getting to the end of your life and then seeing or meeting your future self, what you could have been, right? So I would just say, like, don't get focused on the present too much in terms of how bad things are right now, and just be proactive in terms of self-development is really crucial for me in that. Like, okay, I didn't have money at the time, I didn't have much going for me, but I was like, okay, well, I can read, I can go to the gym, I can rebuild back my physique. That was fair. Like, I can make my way to the gym and just find those little wins. And then just after 26, things started to tip back in my favor.
It feels like, listening to that, and I completely agree with everything you said there. Like, it feels like you went to, similar to what you said with the stoicism, is like you concentrate on things that you could control in that moment. Do you feel like for men and young men and lads in particular, do you feel like there is like this like pressure that we all put on ourselves?
Massive.
You do, yeah.
Hugely, yeah. Like I said, social media, you got these alpha males out there and all this stuff, and it's like, in one instance, I think it's not a bad thing though, because I think almost should put pressure on yourself, because that's what makes you stronger. you don't want to wish for an easy life. You want to almost wish for a difficult life, because that makes it worth living, and that actually makes you stronger, right? So I don't think pressure is a bad thing. I think when it's too much, obviously, but as long as you're doing quick little wins, or compare yourself to where you were last year. If you're even 1% better, cool. We're good, man. Like, remember,
it's
fine wine
for that little progress.
Yeah, don't worry about this guy who's on step 10 when you're on step 2. Like, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant, and yet you're comparing and beating yourself up. You know, I could have a very good month in business, then go on social media and find out someone else in my kind of similar niche is doing like whatever, perceived to do better than me, and it's ruined my joy. Whereas if I would have just blocked that out, like, I'm very careful who I follow and what I let into my life in terms of my digital diet, like the information coming in, because that affects your mental state. So I just block out all that noise or what everyone else is doing. Like, cool, man, like, you're ahead of me or whatever, that's fine. I'm going to stay in my lane, and look after your mental space like that. But yeah, life does get better, man. As long as you're proactive and as long as you recruit that strength to as long as you want to do better every year and you're not a victim, like, oh, I was going to play video games, you'll be fine. Yeah, you will be fine.
What you were saying there, like, I think it's Rob Lipset says a little bit, like, don't compare your chapter 1 to someone's chapter 10.
That's it. Yeah, that's it, man. But completely.
With social media, then, where do you think you draw the line as who you follow can motivate you, but it can also the other way, when you might be in that rut, you can bet your bottom dollar as soon as you go on Instagram, you're going to see 10 posts about how someone's doing so great. So where do you draw that line as to use it as motivation or turn it off and sort of forget those highlight reels?
Yeah, I think if you go on my YouTube, the way I use YouTube, and all the people I'm subscribed to, they're like 500 steps ahead of me. So then I know, like, I'm never going to compare myself, because I'm like, well, this guy's 500 steps. If I compare myself to someone who's like 5 steps ahead of me, that'll actually, I'm not exempt to it. That will, like, I'll start to try and compete with them subconsciously. I'll beat myself up, like, oh, you're not doing that well. Like, what's wrong with you? So it's like, you got to audit that. I think it's good to have idols and aspirations, and I do follow those people. Like, this guy's absolutely killing it. But I also know at the same time, like, I'm still young in the game, or like, it's my own journey. Like, as cliche as it is, but no one's been through what you've been through, so you can't. It's irrelevant comparing it, right? We all life's unfair. Some people were born into a bit more money. Some people were in the right place at the right time. Like, it's irrelevant. What is relevant is to how smart, or I won't say how hard you can work, because I don't want to go into hustle culture, but you know, how much can you, how much is in your control, and what are you going to do with that, right? So, can you go to the gym? Yes. Can you recruit these skills or build up these skills that perhaps you think you're lacking to get to where you want to be? Yes, you've got the internet. Are you a consumer or producer? I think is a big one. One thing that I realize as well, like, the people who are perhaps not where they want to be in life are just pure consumers. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. This is funny, this video. We're going to watch the football on the weekend. So I'm not against football, but like, just pure consumerism. And the people who actually prosper are the ones who produce. Like, how much value can I give here? Can I use this platform to, like, share my story or provide value or whatever, right? And that's where I believe that you begin to prosper. So to just take that frame of mind of being like, if I just start focusing on improving myself and also, as cliche as it is, helping others and providing value, I do think you'll prosper with that.
Definitely. I've got a question that I was just thinking as you were saying that, and whilst we were on topic of, like, you know, young males and all the pressures that come with being them, something that I see often with sort of young males as a whole and people in general is that a lot of people seem to live life like going up a hill. They just wait for the weekend and then go back into that same cycle. Right, let's get pissed at the weekend.
Perpetual cycle.
For people that are listening that potentially want to get out of a cycle like that and they want to start getting productive, they want to start that side hustle. And I'm sure maybe some of your clients have had this, that they're so stuck in this routine. They're so stuck of scrolling on TikTok until their mind feels absolutely numb. So stuck in every Friday getting pissed, every Saturday getting pissed and starting it again. How do you break these bad habits?
So again, I think it comes to auditing your environment again. This time it's relationships or friendships or even family members. So I had to cut off friends who I believed were pulling me down or weren't congruent with the kind of life that I wanted. So when I first started Instagram, for example, I got poked fun at. People were like, oh, you think you're a model, or you think you're someone special, like, who are you, like, you're this guy from this small town. So I just blocked them or cut them off. Or I've lost friends because of this. I actually had friends become, like, jealous and stuff about my physique or whatever it was. So I was like, okay, I'm going to weed out the bad bunch with that. So I think you have to be ruthlessly you have to be ruthless about who you allow into your life, because they will show me friends, I'll show you a future, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I was just very conscious of that from like 17, 18. And I had one friend, really, really good friend, but I just felt like he was a bit of a victim about where he was.
Yeah.
He wouldn't really do anything about it. He'd just complain. I was like, mate, that's negative energy. Like, do something about it. No one gives a fuck. So I distanced myself subconsciously, because I was like, I don't want to be like that. I like to think that you are in control of your life no matter what. Like, okay, some people have been dealt worse cards, but ultimately you can make the best of a bad situation. So yeah, I'd say with in terms of auditing your environment and your friends, you've got to be ruthless about it. If your friends are like, my friends would pull me out every weekend.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, come on, man. He'd even say like, you might meet the one tonight. And I was like, you're not going to meet the love of your life
just
in a club.
A sales pitch.
Yeah. And I was like, and it worked. But obviously come around, it's like, no, I'm not going to meet, I don't think you'll meet very rare to meet a high quality woman snooping around the bars and clubs. You're both intoxicated. It's not genuine. Like, I'm sure there's outliers. I'm sure there's people who have met, together like that and they're a happy relationship. But
I met my missus on a night out.
That's brilliant.
Was that right next to me? That's good. That's great. Yeah, that's great. But what I'm saying is don't use that as an excuse to go out all the time. Because I certainly did. Because I noticed that when I was going out all the time, if you go out sober, you just realize everyone's trying to pull on the dance floor.
Yeah.
Really awkward dynamic. So I noticed it was the same weekend every weekend, and it was like almost a definition of insanity. I was like, I'm just wasting the little money that I do have from this job on alcohol and taxis, and I was like, this could be spent on a course. This could be spent bettering myself, even a book. So I realized quickly, like, if you do what everyone else has done, you'll get what they've got. And I didn't want that kind of slow, build your way up through the hierarchy of work. I didn't like it. And I was seeing people online at the time, the Iman Gatsis and stuff, and like they were making it work through YouTube and stuff, Mo Samuels. So that rubbed off on me, and I realized that you can do it. You just have to surround yourself with those right people. Now, am I saying go and hang around with YouTubers? Am I saying go and hang around with millionaires? No. But what I am saying is audit your online environment as well. So I always followed people who had done what I wished to do, or in that roughly, right? And that would always keep me kind of like in the right lane. Like maybe this friend was saying like, oh, that's not realistic, but I'd be like, this dude's on YouTube showing his documentation of it. It clearly works. Don't listen to the small town mindset, because they're from a small town, right? They're not going where you want to go. So it's knowing to govern your environment and trust it and be very proactive with that, because people also try and pull you down as well. Yeah, that's a big one.
Because that's what's the saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. So, but I see that from the people you interact with face to face, but from what you're saying there as well, you've got to audit your online, who you're interacting with online. Yeah, because that's something I've never really thought about, to be fair.
No, me neither. It's a different perspective to look at it, isn't
I've definitely thought about like my friends and who I hang around with and who I spend time with, but then you think how much time you spend on Instagram and scrolling. I guess you're spending a lot of time on your phone.
You spend more time on your phone than your friends.
100%.
Right? So why would you not audit it? It's like I'm quite snobby with who I follow, and some friends or some people would get a bit funny, like, why aren't you following me back, dude? It's like, look, Derek, I don't want to look at your selfies with your dog. Like, I know it's just, there's no value in it for me. Like, I'd rather, if I go on Instagram, at least it's useful in some sense. Like, that was actually a really good educational video, or that guy's killing it. That inspires me. Not like a bunch of stuff that not average people do, like not like that, but just the stuff that I'm not aligned with. Like, I don't want that kind of life, so I don't allow it in my environment.
What about the classic? And I don't want to use this phrase because I hate the phrase, but like the people that say about work-life balance and don't get me wrong, I work very hard and I try and focus and try and do all these things that you're saying, but I'm subjective. I like going out sometimes. I like spending time with friends. How do you have this life where you can do both? Do you think you can do both?
Absolutely, yeah. It's just kind of like 80-20 rule. 80% on your grind, 20% enjoy, or work hard, play hard. So what I like to do is like 3-month stints. Yeah. I recently I go to Portugal and do like a month of like monk mode. So it's just train, client work, make content, rinse and repeat. Yeah. Right? And everything else is a distraction, right? And then what I'll do is like, I want to have a blowout, but we'll just go to a music event. Me and Amy will go. Or, you'll have that downtime, because being lazy is actually productive. Like being not like, it's okay to be, you're not born just to like work. although you will find purpose in your work, you're not born just to be grafting all the time. Like it's okay to not be productive. And I struggled with that when I was first starting my business. I was like, I don't deserve to be out on this weekend. It's like, mate, you've been working 3 months now. Like Amy's really good. She's always like, you're fine. Like business is doing great. You work like, you know, really, really hard. Obviously not too hard, but you know, you're on your graft. You're doing really well. Like cut yourself a bit of slack. You know? So I was like, it's everything moderation, including moderation, like I said.
We have those conversations quite frequently, don't we? Like about, you sort of battle your own head, like, oh, do I deserve that? And sometimes it's nice to be able to have someone to like, mate, you've done well, have a bit of a break. I think that goes back to what you were saying about surrounding yourself with people that are not only going to benefit you business wise, but that also, you know, you sound like you've got a fantastic relationship with Amy, who you've mentioned, that having people around you that can actually say, like, well done, let's take a break and let's...
I think you've got to trust those people that are saying it as well, though, because you get a lot of people who can say, oh, just take a break, but are your best interests at heart? Like, it's got to be the right person telling you that, I think.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Has, obviously you spoke about it quite a bit, but finding, you know, a partner that is sort of resonated with your values, has that been extremely beneficial for what you're looking to achieve and what you're doing?
Massively, man. Like, there's one thing, I was 26 when me and Amy got together. It was actually my first and hopefully last girlfriend. And I thought up until that point, I thought I was like maybe asexual or something, because I'd never had a girlfriend.
Really?
I was like, I was just either like so picky
to
the point that I was like, I just didn't want to settle for that. Because to me, I feel like people get in the relationships for the sake of comfort, like, oh, that'll do or whatever. But for me, it was always like, no, she has to have these values, and we have to like, she has to go enjoy going to the gym and eat healthy and all this stuff. And I was like, but then obviously as I get older, like those women, I find it quite hard to come by. Right. And Amy's really supportive with the business. Like she wants me to work, apart from Sundays. I don't do anything on Sundays. It's our time. We always set that out. So there's that balance there. But I think like there's a lot of movement at the moment for like, oh, you know, women are just good for one night stands or stuff or whatever. He's be a player and all that stuff. But if you can find yourself like a high quality woman who actually like being in a relationship in which they actually make your business or your own life better is so valuable. It's like the best business partner. It's like having it's a business partner because it's like, but with amazing trust, because you know they're not going to fuck you over. So I always trust her judgment and stuff. Like she makes the business better. Like she does my admin, she did my taxes, like, and she doesn't even complain about it. And, you know, it works well because obviously like I'll appreciate her as long as I vocalize it or do it in a certain way, right? Make time for her. So that relationship for me is like, I don't think you should ever settle for that. I think you should only settle for that, sorry. But it's difficult to get, right? And people don't want to go through the process of being lonely, I think. But I did. I was like 26, like, fucking hell, I'm like, what's going on here? I was like, I'm a pretty good looking lad and stuff, but no, you know, no game. So yeah, it was quite like, oh, what's going on? Like midway through 20s, and then first girlfriend, like best relationship ever, like really helps with the business. And that opens my eyes to like, if you get the correct woman, she should amplify your life. It should never be you come home from a long day and then she's fucking moaning. Like that's the last thing you want. And like, yeah, you want someone who's like just listens or supports you, not someone who's like, oh, I'm a big piece of work, you can't handle me. Like,
adds drama.
Don't want that
because I'm a bad bitch. See you later.
See ya.
A lot of people from like a business standpoint say if you get a girlfriend or you get a missus, that's going to take away from your business. But like you're saying here, and it's in the same position with me, if you can get a partner that actually helps your business thrive, adds value, is that person you can ask questions to that's going to give you the best advice. I think I'm personally from that standpoint that with the right person that can definitely help your business, and you'd probably say the same as well.
1000%, man. Like that's been if there's one like real business hack, it's like get yourself a girlfriend who actually like wants you to do well, or like doesn't get like, oh, you're not spending enough time with me. She understands that you're a man on your mission and that you actually both want to provide and have that good life later. Like we make time for each other, absolutely, but she really comes in and complements it, if not adds to it.
Do you think it's a man's role to provide in a relationship?
I'm traditional.
Not
everyone would agree with that, and that's fine.
No, I agree.
I think you should, you know, masculine energy, feminine energy, opposites attract. I think you should play to your strengths. Men like to be providers. We like to be useful, right? If I don't feel useful, if I can't change, for example, like very typical masculine stereotype here, but if I can't change a tire, I won't feel useful if I have to be like, Amy, I have to call you dad. That's the worst thing. Like, I just want to be useful to my family and to my partner, right? And I find that women are very, very feminine women typically. I think the ones who haven't been indoctrinated by this third wave feminism, to be honest, I think those are the ones that like they actually just want to be like they say men want to be, women just want to be submissive and men want to not dominate. I don't want to use that word, but they want to lead. They want to provide. They want to protect, right? And I find that if a woman just actually kind of plays into that role and plays to her strength of like making sure the house is really like lovely and like she's very supportive and she's got that feminine energy, the opposites attract. Whereas if you've got a masculine energy in a woman, too much of it, and then you've got a masculine man, it's never the opposites of magnets. I always imagine that. And I found that's worked really well for our relationship. Like we both just communicate our roles and our values, and if we're not happy, we communicate that, and it's worked every time. But I do think men should be providers. I think there's a reason why CEOs are often correlated with higher testosterone, because that gives you that drive to work harder. Testosterone is not just about aggression. In the physical sense, it's also about like, I'm going to work and grind and grit to the top of the hierarchy.
Do you think that providing for women, that also correlates with like financially providing for as well? Or do you think it's just purely things like that you mentioned there, like changing a tile? Do you feel like the man should provide in a financial standpoint?
Yeah, I would say in most instances, I would, because I come back to that testosterone, like women, some feminists believe that we live in a patriarchy in which there's no equal pay, and like if that was the case, then why doesn't all businesses just hire women for cheaper labor? It doesn't exist. And the reason what's actually going on here is that the men actually tend to go for those more higher paying jobs because they have that aggression and testosterone to want to take on those responsibilities. And men want to work. We want to work hard. We want to be recognized for our achievements. I'm not saying women don't want to have that either. But I think if you have to generalize here, it is more men. If you look at populations in which they just kind of let it pan out, it tends to be that men go to be engineers and women are nurses because they're more caring and they're better at it. You're not going to beat a woman's touch, man. No. You're not going to beat it. I'm not going to pretend here like we can be equal. We're not equal. We need to play to our strengths. And that's when it works better. So in terms of like providing financially, I'm more than happy to do that, because at the end of the day, like I'm the one in this situation that I can, if Amy, she got like a big job or something, I would be okay with it. But I also be at the same time, like I want to be able to provide and know that everything's okay. Like I got you. I don't want to be like having to depend on her for finance. I just feel in my soul emasculated for that. I know a lot of left people would be like, that's so wrong. I don't give a fuck, man. I
think it's good that you're just saying it how it is. And so many, I mean, you've seen the likes of Andrew Tate and some influencers say exactly how they feel, and some people that hate it will hate on it. But I think it's good that people can come on things like this, like a podcast, and actually start to feel more comfortable now with actually saying what they think, and their way of thinking of it. Because, like you rightfully said, who gives a fuck what the other people are going to say? It's your thought process. But no, I think it's good that you can just say it how it is.
For sure, man. I don't shout about it too much, because I find, especially online, you never change someone's mind.
No.
I never get in an argument online because it's never going to happen. Like, he's never going to be like, you know what, Alex, you were right. They'll always like feel like their ego is attacked, because if they're to admit that they're wrong would mean that they're wrong as a person, or their ego defends them. So I just let you do you, man. If you want to believe that, that's fine. But for me, it's always worked for me in terms of like sticking to your roles. And I do believe like men should be men and women should be women and come together. And that's the best. Like, that's the strongest thing.
I think with men always, like you said about working hard, that's also where the hustle culture sometimes comes from.
100%.
Like, I don't know whether, maybe I'm wrong, there may be a stat on this, but I don't see many women suffering from like hustle culture or things like that, because men put that pressure on themselves to be like that. And I think it's more associated with men, in my opinion. Yeah,
they say that women and children are loved unconditionally and men are loved on what they can provide. So I always remember that. I'm like, even on the Titanic, I don't want to have to stay in this fucking boat, but you did it because that was your man. You're the man. You let the women and children go.
He could have definitely fitted on that door though.
100%, man. Like, come on, you bitch. There's so much room. So it's like, man. I think definitely just be a man, be a provider, and focus on providing value and being useful, and you'll find that your life gets better. Because men just want to be useful, man, and that's what everything was. This place was built by men. Men are like the hardest workers, like the sewage cleaners, like the bin men, like the really difficult jobs. Where are the feminists now when it comes to those jobs? Like, why, if you want to be equal, like the issue I have with feminism, man, like that first wave feminism is absolutely warranted. Like right to vote, more than happy for that. Third wave feminism, like this modern feminism, they want all the privileges of being a traditional woman without none of like the previous older way. So they want to be wined and dined, but they also they want to be a bad bitch, and also don't need no man because they're strong and independent. It's like I think a lot of women would actually be happier if they forgot about that role, because last time I checked, for me, I don't give a fuck how much a girl earns if we were dating or something. It doesn't cross my mind. What crosses my mind is like, what kind of girl are you in terms of how kind are you and how thoughtful are you? Like men, on the other hand, the first thing like a girl's friends ask them like, oh, what does he do? Because they're basically judging in the head like, how much money does he earn? Of course, that's a natural thing. Like, and that's just how it is, I think, instinctively. So to deny that, I think, is you're denying human nature and how we work and how we work best. But
I'm gonna say it goes back to like the innate characteristics, like when hundreds of thousands of years ago the men went out to hunt for food, etc.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It goes back to that.
Exactly, and I think it's always worked like that for a reason. And we've come to this society now in which we've kind of, I'm not saying women can't go out and work and go and be a CEO. That's absolutely fine. What I'm saying is contemplate that you might actually be happier with putting less pressure on yourself and being a really good mother, or sticking to your strength in terms of women are much more caring. They have a lot more greater emotional intelligence. Like, for example, me and Amy go out and we go and shop somewhere, and the person behind the desk is like, I think they're fine. It's a woman. And then I'm like, oh, she was all right, wasn't she? And Amy's like, she was a fucking bitch. I'm like, what are you on about? She's like, did you not see how she looked at you? Like, they pick up on little subtle cues. I'm like, oh, I didn't know. Right? We're not designed for that. No, because women didn't have strength to protect themselves, so they had to use knowledge and gossip to use it as leverage, right? So that's why they have better skills. That's why I think women love to gossip, because knowledge would mean power. And that's why they're better at emotional intelligence, picking up bad vibes, or like, she was a bitch and I didn't see it. I think that's because you have that innate strength. Like,
I do think they have better like gut feelings.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
Judge a character as well.
Man, 100%.
So if my missus says, I'm not too sure, almost like I'll go with what you say.
That's what I do with Amy. I never doubt a judge. I'm like, you're a woman, you know.
Yeah. They have good judgment.
Be like, oh, he was bad vibes, and I was like, was he?
Yeah. I thought it was a great chat.
I thought it was all sound.
But I'll go with what you say.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Spot on.
So no, I think definitely stick to your roles in that sense. And I think everything just works better. And so far in our relationship, it really has. Like, it's great. I'm very grateful.
I think there's I'm cautious that we're running out of time, but Alex, I think this has been brilliant. I've certainly learnt a lot, and I think a lot of people listening will. One final question for people that are listening. Obviously, I'm sure we'll add all your social links and everything so they can follow you and keep track of your journey. But what's next for you? Have you got any plans or upcoming sort of steps for where you want to go, and have you got any goals that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too explicit with my goals, because I think I read it, and I think there's some credibility to this. When you state your goals out clearly, it releases some dopamine in terms of a sense of accomplishment, that you've actually accomplished them because you're verbalizing it. Yeah. But that's obviously not the case, so I think you maybe back off a little bit.
Okay, no, that's interesting.
So I'd rather, I'll say my goals happily, but I never like, some people on Instagram like, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and this, and this. All well and good, man, but just action, not words. Like,
do you write them down though? Like, each year,
I write them down each year, but I don't go. Some people have like a really complex goal system. I just have like 3 to 5 big goals, like either in business or personal. And for me, the goals for business isn't difficult, because it's just like, just keep doing the work. And the goals will eventually like show themselves. Like, we know that as long as we're net positive, I'm good, and as long as I'm helping more people, as long as I'm getting more knowledge and getting growing, then we're fine. We don't have to get too focused on the end goal, because the goal's always going to change. So do I have any goals? Like, it's just cut out so many distractions in terms of I'm getting like opportunities to do something else at the moment. I find that as you start growing, other people kind of want not a piece of the pie, but like, oh, you should come and do this, man. And they start trying to persuade you, and it's like, no, we need to stay tunnel vision, have an amazing coaching service, build that up, and then eventually probably step away from it and maybe look into something else. But I'm not quite sure, to be honest.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Maybe property later in life, we'll see. But I definitely think for the time being, it's just making a genuine impact on peak performance health and health coaching with that. And just take each day as it comes for the next, I'm thinking long term, like 3 to 5 years, and then we'll consider like, is there a different goal? But for now, it's just every day do this, help clients, YouTube, post consistently. Don't worry about the metrics unless it's like consistently net negative, then you're obviously doing something wrong. And everything will be fine as long as you're showing up and doing the work. So that's my goal. In terms of personal goals, not really. Maybe travel a little bit more with Amy. We agreed to do that because, you know, I can work from anywhere. She can as well. We're very fortunate. But other than that, I'm pretty content, man, with how things are going.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much for your time, man. It's been a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much, mate.
Cheers. No worries.